Dust billowed across the desolate street of Silver Creek as Nora Gaines stood on the worn porch of her modest dress shop, clutching a piece of paper that sealed her fate. It was 1878, and the bank had given her just 30 days to settle her late father's debts or lose everything. Women who ran businesses alone in frontier towns like this one were already viewed with suspicion, but now the whispers had grown louder, more venomous. "Poor thing can't even keep the shop her daddy built," Vivian Hastings remarked loudly to her companions as they passed by, their expensive dresses swishing dramatically. No husband, no family, and soon no business. How pitiful. Nora lifted her chin, refusing to show how deeply the words cut. At 26, she had heard it all before. Too headstrong, they said, too independent. Too plain with her unruly auburn hair and practical ways. Not that it mattered, she'd been too busy caring for her ailing father to worry about finding a husband. "Might be time to consider Whitaker's offer," another voice called out, referring to the town's wealthiest businessman who had been making increasingly aggressive proposals to buy her property. Nora gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white, knowing what accepting Whitaker's help would truly mean. She would rather starve than become another trophy for that man. That evening, Nora wiped down the countertops of her empty shop with mechanical precision. 4 customers all day. It wasn't enough. Her stomach twisted with anxiety as she calculated the numbers yet again. Even if she worked day and night sewing custom orders, she wouldn't make enough to save the business. The bell above the door chimed, startling her from her grim thoughts. Standing in the doorway was a man she'd never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, with the unmistakable look of someone who lived in the saddle. His dark hair was slightly too long, and a layer of trail dust covered his well-worn clothing. "We're closed," Nora said automatically. The stranger's eyes, a striking shade of green, met hers. Door was open. His voice was deep with a slight rasp. "Just rode into town. Need a few supplies if you're willing." Something about his direct gaze made Nora hesitate before nodding. "What do you need?" "Shirt got torn to pieces crossing the Rockies." He held up a bundle of fabric that might once have been a shirt. "And I could use some sturdy thread." As Nora gathered supplies, the stranger introduced himself. "Name's Riley Galloway." "Nora Gaines," she replied, measuring fabric against his broad shoulders. "Just passing through Silver Creek?" Riley's expression remained unreadable. "Not sure yet. Heard there might be ranch work around these parts." He paused, studying her face. "You run this place alone?" The question stung, too similar to the town's constant judgment. "Yes, Mr. Galloway, I do." Her tone sharpened. "Is that a problem?" A hint of a smile crossed his face. "Not to me. Impressive, actually." The unexpected compliment caught Nora off guard. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had described her work as impressive rather than foolish. When Riley returned the next day to collect his mended shirt, Nora was in the middle of an uncomfortable confrontation with Herbert Whitaker. The portly businessman was leaning over her counter, his voice low but insistent. "Be reasonable, Miss Gaines. You can't possibly manage this debt alone. I'm offering you a fair price for the property, and perhaps—" His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Other arrangements could be discussed." "My answer remains no, Mr. Whitaker," Nora replied, keeping her voice steady despite her disgust. The bell chimed as Riley entered, and Whitaker straightened immediately, clearly irritated by the interruption. "Your shirt is ready, Mr. Galloway," Nora said, grateful for the distraction. She handed him the neatly folded garment, her fingers trembling slightly. Riley nodded, then looked between her and Whitaker with keen assessment. "Everything all right here?" Before Nora could answer, Whitaker puffed up his chest. "This is a private business discussion, stranger. Best move along." Riley didn't budge. "Miss Gaines?" The simple question asking for her perspective rather than assuming nearly undid her. "Mr. Whitaker was just leaving," she managed. Whitaker's face reddened. "Consider my offer, Nora. You won't get a better one. A woman alone can't survive out here, everyone knows that." He brushed past Riley, who stepped aside but kept his eyes fixed on the businessman until he was gone. When the door closed, Nora released a shaky breath. "Thank you," Riley shrugged. "Didn't do anything." He placed coins on the counter for his shirt. "Seems like you handled him fine." "He'll be back," Nora admitted, then wondered why she was confiding in a stranger. Perhaps because Riley Galloway was the only person who had looked at her without pity or judgment in months. "Trouble?" he asked simply. Nora considered deflecting, but found herself telling him about her father's death, the unexpected debts, and Whitaker's persistent offers. "The bank has given me 30 days. After that," she gestured vaguely. Riley listened without interruption. When she finished, he asked, "You good with numbers? Bookkeeping?" The question seemed odd. "Yes, my father taught me. Why?" "Got hired at the Carson Ranch yesterday. Owner mentioned needing someone to sort out their accounts. His wife used to handle it, but she passed last winter." Riley studied her. "Pays well. Might help with your situation." Nora blinked. "They wouldn't hire a woman." "They might if I recommend you." Old man Carson seemed reasonable. Hope flickered briefly before Nora squashed it. "And why would you do that? You don't know me." Riley's gaze was steady. "Know enough. You need work that pays better than this empty shop. Carson needs help." Seems simple. He headed for the door, then paused. "I'll be by tomorrow with word." True to his word, Riley returned the next afternoon with news that Carson wanted to meet her. Nora closed her shop early, changed into her best dress, and rode out to the ranch with Riley, acutely aware of his solid presence on the horse beside her. James Carson proved to be a weathered but kind man in his 60s who asked practical questions about her experience. By the end of the hour, Nora had secured a position working 3 days a week organizing the ranch's accounts work she could do alongside keeping her shop open. As they rode back toward town, the setting sun cast long shadows across the rolling landscape. "Thank you," Nora said quietly. "I don't know why you're helping me, but I'm grateful." Riley was silent for a long moment. "Lost my mother young. She ran a small place like yours after my father died. Town drove her to ruin." His voice hardened slightly. "Didn't like a woman managing alone." Understanding dawned. "I'm sorry." He nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy without dwelling on it. "Carson's a good man. He'll treat you fair." Over the next few weeks, a rhythm developed. Nora kept her shop open 4 days a week and rode to the Carson Ranch for the other 3. The extra income helped enormously, allowing her to begin paying down her father's debts while keeping the business afloat. Riley, she discovered, was a man of few words but constant action. He worked from dawn until dusk at the ranch, quickly becoming Carson's most trusted hand. Occasionally, he would escort Nora to and from the ranch, claiming it was on his way, though she suspected he deliberately altered his schedule to do so. During these rides, Nora found herself sharing stories about her father, her childhood in Silver Creek, and her dreams for expanding the dress shop someday. Riley mostly listened, offering occasional glimpses into his own life growing up in Missouri, working cattle drives across the territories, learning to break horses from a Comanche man who'd taken him under his wing. One evening in early June, Nora attended Silver Creek's monthly social at the church hall. She wouldn't have gone, but Mrs. Peterson had commissioned a dress and insisted Nora come see how well it had been received. The cool reception from many townspeople was expected. Nora had grown accustomed to being tolerated rather than welcomed. She was arranging cookies on a plate when Vivian Hastings approached with two other women. "Nora, dear," Vivian said with false sweetness, "we were just discussing you, still hanging on to that little shop, and now riding out to the Carson place alone with that drifter." She clicked her tongue disapprovingly. People are talking. Heat rushed to Nora's cheeks. "Mr. Galloway is a respected employee of the Carson Ranch, and I am their bookkeeper. There's nothing improper." "Of course, dear," Vivian interrupted. "It's just that women in your situation must be extra careful about appearances." She lowered her voice. "Though I suppose beggars can't be choosers when it comes to male attention." The other women tittered behind their gloved hands, and Nora felt a familiar crushing sensation in her chest, the weight of their judgment, the isolation they enforced. "Don't you have anything better to do than gossip about someone trying to make an honest living?" A deep voice cut through the conversation. Nora turned to find Riley standing behind her, looking uncomfortable but determined in clean clothes and freshly polished boots. She hadn't expected to see him here. He normally avoided town gatherings. Vivian's expression soured. "Mr. Galloway, this is a private conversation." "Didn't sound private to me," Riley replied. "Sounded like you were publicly shaming Miss Gaines for working hard and supporting herself." A small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by the confrontation. Nora wanted to disappear. "Riley, please, it's not worth—" "It is worth it," he interrupted quietly. His eyes met hers, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. He turned back to face Vivian and the now substantial audience. "You mock her for being alone, for making her own way without a man to depend on." His voice carried across the suddenly silent room. "Then let them watch me love you." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Riley gently took Nora's hand. "I've admired your strength since the day I met you," he continued, speaking only to her now, though everyone could hear. "Your kindness, your determination. If you'll allow it, I'd like to court you properly, Miss Gaines." Nora stared at him, heart pounding. This wasn't just about silencing the gossips. The truth was written plainly in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered, scarcely believing her own courage. Riley's smile transformed his usually serious face. He offered his arm, and Nora took it, allowing him to lead her away from the stunned onlookers and out into the cool evening air. Once outside, Nora found her voice. "Did you mean what you said in there?" Riley looked down at her, expression solemn again. "Every word. Been trying to find the courage to speak for weeks now." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Not good with words, better with horses." A laugh escaped her, part relief, part joy. "I think you did just fine with words tonight." His courtship began properly the next day, when he arrived at her shop with wildflowers picked from the prairie. The entire town watched with undisguised interest as the quiet cowboy escorted Nora to church on Sundays, brought her lunch during busy workdays, and sat on her porch in the evenings, talking until the stars emerged. For Nora, each day revealed new facets of Riley, his dry humor, his surprising knowledge of literature from the books his mother had cherished, his gentle way with injured animals, and the deep sense of justice that drove him. Never understood men who looked down on women working their own way, he told her one evening as they walked along the creek. My mother was the strongest person I ever knew, raised me alone after my father died in the war, kept our farm running until the bank took it. Nora squeezed his hand. What happened to her? Riley's face darkened. Consumption. But the town's treatment broke her spirit long before the illness took her body. They made her feel like less for doing what she had to do. Is that why you approached me that first day? Because I reminded you of her? Riley stopped walking, turning to face her. Maybe at first, but that's not why I'm here now. His hands, calloused from ranch work, gently framed her face. I'm here because you're the most remarkable woman I've ever known, Nora Gaines. When he kissed her for the first time, beneath the cottonwood trees with the creek murmuring nearby, Nora felt as though her life had finally begun. Not everyone approved of their relationship. Herbert Whitaker, in particular, made his displeasure known, spreading rumors that Riley was a wanted man hiding from a criminal past. When these failed to gain traction, Carson vouched firmly for Riley's character. Whitaker resorted to more direct methods. One morning in late July, Nora arrived at her shop to find the front window shattered and a brick lying amidst broken glass and ruined fabrics. Sheriff Mills investigated, but concluded it was probably just mischievous boys. No way to prove otherwise, Miss Gaines, he said with a shrug that suggested he wasn't particularly motivated to try. Riley was furious when he saw the damage. Whitaker, he growled, picking up a shard of glass. We don't know that, Nora cautioned, though she suspected the same. I know it. Riley's eyes were hard. Man like that doesn't take rejection well. And he sees me as taking something he wanted. Nora touched his arm. I was never his to take. Riley helped her clean up the mess and installed a new window that same day, working alongside Carson, who appeared with tools and materials, refusing to accept Nora's attempts to pay him. You're practically family now, the old rancher told her with a wink toward Riley, who actually blushed a sight that delighted Nora. That night, after the shop was secured, Riley walked Nora to her small house behind the store. On the porch, he hesitated. I should stay tonight. Keep watch. People would talk, Nora reminded him, though the idea of his protection was tempting. Let them. His expression was resolute. I'll sleep on the porch, just until we're sure there won't be more trouble. Against her better judgment, Nora agreed. The knowledge that Riley was just outside her door brought a sense of security she hadn't realized she'd been missing. In the darkest hour before dawn, Nora woke to the smell of smoke. She stumbled from bed to find her kitchen engulfed in flames, thick smoke already filling the small house. Riley! She screamed, choking on the acrid air. The door burst open as Riley charged in, a bandana covering his nose and mouth. Fire's been set, he shouted, grabbing her arm. Back of the house, come on. They escaped through the front, watching in horror as the flames spread rapidly to the shop. Neighbors emerged from their homes as Riley and several men formed a bucket brigade from the town well. Sheriff Mills organized the effort, but it was too late by morning. Both Nora's home and shop were charred ruins. Everything's gone, Nora whispered, staring at the smoldering remains of her life. The realization that someone had deliberately tried to harm her, perhaps even kill her, was almost too terrible to comprehend. Riley's arm tightened around her shoulders. Not everything. His voice was rough with emotion and smoke. You're alive. That's what matters. Sheriff Mills approached them, his expression grave. Found evidence the fire was set deliberately. Oil poured along the back wall. He looked uncomfortable. "Miss Gaines, do you have any enemies?" Before Nora could respond, Riley spoke. Whitaker threatened her, wanted her property. When she wouldn't sell, he tried intimidation. Mills frowned. "That's a serious accusation, Galloway." "It's the truth," Riley insisted. "Check his whereabouts last night." The sheriff promised to investigate, but Nora had little hope. Herbert Whitaker was a prominent citizen, and she was just a dressmaker without a dress shop. Carson insisted that Nora stay at the ranch while she figured out her next steps. "Got plenty of room since my boys moved out," he told her, "and the books still need keeping." Nora accepted gratefully. The ranch became her sanctuary as she grieved the loss of her father's business and her independence. Riley remained a constant presence, helping her salvage what little could be recovered from the ruins and offering quiet support when grief overwhelmed her. 2 weeks after the fire, Sheriff Mills rode out to the Carson ranch with surprising news. Herbert Whitaker had been arrested for arson. "One of his hired men confessed," Mills explained. "Said Whitaker paid him to scare you out of town, but things got out of hand." He looked genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry, Miss Gaines. Should have taken your concerns more seriously." The relief of knowing the truth was tempered by the hard reality that Nora still had nothing to return to. The insurance money would barely cover her remaining debts, leaving nothing to rebuild with. That evening, Riley found her sitting alone on the ranch house porch, staring at the distant mountains. "What will you do now?" he asked, settling beside her. Nora sighed. "I don't know. Start over somewhere, I suppose." The prospect was daunting. "Carson has been kind, but I can't impose forever." Riley was quiet for a long moment. "You could stay." "As his bookkeeper? It's not enough to live on permanently." "No." Riley shifted to face her, taking her hands in his. "As my wife." Nora's heart stuttered. "Riley, I love you, Nora Gaines." His voice was steady, his green eyes earnest. "Have since that day you stood up to Whitaker in your shop. I know this isn't the proper way, no ring, nothing to offer but myself." "Yes," Nora interrupted, tears welling in her eyes. Riley blinked. "Yes?" "Yes, I'll marry you." She laughed through her tears. "I love you too, and you're offering me everything I need." The kiss they shared sealed a promise that had been building between them from the first moment they met. They were married 2 weeks later in Carson's living room, with the old rancher giving Nora away and a handful of ranch hands serving as witnesses. Vivian Hastings and her friends were noticeably absent, but Nora found she didn't care. The people who mattered were present. Carson's wedding gift stunned them both, a deed to 5 acres of his land and enough lumber to build a home. "Been meaning to split this property anyway," he said gruffly when they tried to refuse. "Getting too old to manage it all. You two can help." Their house took shape through the fall, with Riley working alongside hired carpenters while still fulfilling his ranch duties. Nora converted one room into a new dressmaking studio, determined to rebuild her business on a smaller scale. Word of Whitaker's arrest and conviction had spread throughout the territory, and surprisingly, it enhanced Nora's reputation. Women who had previously avoided her now sought her out, impressed by her resilience. Orders for dresses began arriving from neighboring towns. "Seems like burning down your shop actually helped your business," Riley remarked one evening as Nora showed him the latest commissions. "People love a good story of perseverance," she replied, smiling. "Though I wouldn't recommend arson as a business strategy." By Christmas of 1878, their home was complete, a sturdy 2-bedroom cabin with large windows that flooded Nora's sewing room with natural light. They hosted a small gathering for Carson and the ranch hands, filling the new house with laughter and warmth. Later that night, as they lay in their bed listening to the winter wind, Riley traced patterns on Nora's shoulder. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible." She turned to face him. "You saved me, you know." Riley shook his head. "No, you were saving yourself just fine. I just helped clear the path a bit. Either way, I'm grateful fate brought you to my shop that day." "Wasn't fate," Riley admitted. "Carson mentioned a dressmaker in town who'd fallen on hard times, said she reminded him of my mother, stubborn, independent." He smiled at her surprised expression. "I tore my shirt deliberately before coming to town, wanted an excuse to meet you." Nora laughed. "You tore a perfectly good shirt just to meet me?" "Best decision I ever made." His expression grew serious. "They mocked you for being alone, but you were never weak, Nora. Your strength is what drew me to you." As spring arrived in 1879, Silver Creek witnessed another transformation. With Whitaker in prison, his businesses were sold to more honest merchants. The town slowly shed its judgmental attitudes, in part because of Nora and Riley's example. Nora's dress business thrived, with her new designs gaining popularity throughout the territory. Riley continued working as Carson's foreman while developing their own small section of the ranch, raising horses with the skills he'd learned years before. When Nora discovered she was expecting a child in the summer, the news spread quickly through town. To her surprise, Vivian Hastings was among the first to call with congratulations and an order for a baby blanket. "People change," Riley observed when Nora told him about the visit. "Sometimes they just need to see someone brave enough to live differently." Their daughter, Margaret Rose Galloway, was born in the winter of 1880, a beautiful child with her father's green eyes and her mother's auburn hair. Carson declared himself honorary grandfather and spoiled the baby shamelessly. As Nora nursed her daughter one evening, Riley sat beside them, marveling at the family they had created. "Remember when I said, 'Let them watch me love you' at that social?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from Nora's face. She smiled. "How could I forget? You scandalized half the town. Best moment of my life until this little one arrived." He touched their daughter's tiny hand. "Never thought I'd find this a family of my own." "Nor did I." Nora leaned against him. "I was so focused on proving I could survive alone that I never considered how wonderful it would be to choose not to be alone." Riley pressed a kiss to her temple. "That's the difference. You chose this. We chose each other." By the spring of 1881, Nora had expanded her dressmaking business to include a small shop in town again, this time with Riley's carpentry skills creating beautiful display cases and counters. They hired a young woman to help with sewing, giving another independent spirit the opportunity Nora had once needed. Carson, now in his 70s but still sharp, officially made Riley partner in the ranch. "Always wanted a son to pass this on to," he told them over dinner. "Got something better, a family." 5 years after Riley first walked into Nora's shop, Silver Creek hosted its centennial celebration. The town had grown, with a railroad spur bringing new opportunities and residents. Among the organizing committee was Nora Galloway, now mother to 2 children and owner of the most successful dressmaking business in 3 counties. During the festivities, Vivian Hastings, now considerably humbler after her husband's business failures, approached Nora. "I owe you an apology," she said, watching Riley chase their children across the town square. "I was cruel to you. Jealous, if I'm honest." "Jealous?" Nora was genuinely surprised. Of your independence, your courage. Vivian smiled sadly. I married because it was expected, not because I loved Edward. You built a life on your own terms. Nora considered this. We all make different choices. The important thing is having the freedom to choose. Later, as lanterns illuminated the town square for dancing, Riley pulled Nora close. Mrs. Hastings apologizing. The world truly has changed. People grow, Nora replied, just like us. Riley's arms tightened around her waist as they swayed to the music. I promised to love you where everyone could see. Still plan to keep that promise for the rest of our days. As the fiddle played, and their children dozed nearby under Carson's watchful eye, Nora rested her head against Riley's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. From the ashes of her old life, something far more precious had emerged, a love strong enough to withstand judgment, disaster, and the harsh realities of the frontier. I wouldn't change a thing, she whispered, not even the fire. Riley's lips brushed her forehead. Nor would I. Every step brought us here. Above them, stars illuminated the vast western sky, bearing witness to a love that had defied convention and transformed not only their lives, but the very fabric of the town that had once scorned a woman for daring to stand alone.